Hello everybody, how you doing tonight? It's Tuesday night and I'm ready to work on my car. Sunday after I went in, excuse me, I found out after doing a little research that the cable I broke went to something called a knock sensor. And what a knock sensor is when they got away from leaded gasoline and went to unleaded gasoline, it caused vehicles to make a knocking noise. You might remember that from back in the late 70s, early 80s. And this sensor, there's one on the front of the engine and one on the back, and it watches for that, and then it adjusts the fuel air mixture to stop the knock. And I found out what it was. I went to a dealership, a GM dealership on Monday at lunchtime, and they ordered it for me, and it came in today. So I just got back from picking it up. I've got it. The problem is it's got the end that goes into the knock, or the knock sensor, but it doesn't have the end that goes into the wiring harness, which is this big end here. So what I'm going to do is splice these two cables together, and I'll solder them. And I picked up some heat shrink today, and then I picked up some additional loom so that I could protect them. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start out by cutting the cables, stripping them down, getting them wired together, soldered up, heat shrink, put the loom on them, run it through the motor, get it all connected up. Once it's connected, then we're going to start putting the pump back in. I hope I can finish this job tonight, because 2 days without a car is just painful, because there's so many things you're like, oh, I'll run out and do this. Oh, shoot, I can't. I don't have a car. So let me get set up to do a little soldering. I'm going to try to give you guys a front row seat. This is the new cable, and what I'm going to do is I don't need this much cable. I mean, this is just far too long. It'll just get in the way. This is the length of the old cable. It used to attach right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim a little bit of this off. I may go ahead and cut it, say to about here to give me just a little bit more slack. That way I can move the pump around a little more freely. And so let's go ahead and just get that cut. Now what I want to do is I need to strip these cables. I've got these wire strippers here. Okay. Take off a decent amount of wire. Get my soldering gun fired up. We make sure with this soldering gun, this is a butane, we want to make sure the little glow is up, because that's where the heat's coming out, and if you put it down, it'll burn a nice hole in your table. So what I want to do is go ahead and get these, actually what I want to do is get a piece of heat shrink. Let's go with a little longer piece. Get a piece of heat shrink on this cable before I go any farther. There we go, because we're going to want to heat that up. Let's go ahead now, and I'm going to twist these together. This came with what they call a butt splice, and you can basically put the wires in the butt splice and crimp it, but I didn't want to do that. Okay, now give my soldering iron a second to heat up, and I'll come back and we'll put a little solder on there. Trying to heat this up and draw plenty of solder between the wires. That looks pretty good. Let me flip it over and see what it looks like on the back side. I'll lay this thing down. I don't want to end up burning myself. Yeah, let's get a little bit more on the back side here. Just want to make sure, I didn't want to use the butt splice. I spoke about that earlier, about it coming with a butt splice. And I really didn't want to use the butt splice because my concern was if I crimp it together, the crimp could pull loose after a while. And I really didn't want that. I'm not the world's best solderer, but that should hold. Let that cool down. Okay. It's not hot. I thought it was going to be hot. I jerked back instinctively, but it wasn't. Let's go ahead and get this heat shrink over this. Let me find it, make sure I'm about in the middle, and I am. And then I got this little butane torch here. And let me go get a match. I forgot that this has to be, I have to ignite it, and I'll need a match to do that. Okay. There we go. Let that burn for a second. Now, I shouldn't have to touch too much of the flame on here. I should just be able to get it close. And it should shrink this heat shrink right down. The nice thing about this stuff is it'll shrink. Yep, I just choked the blade off, or I'm running out of butane. I still hear the butane coming out of it, so I think it was me choking the flame down. This stuff will seal it from moisture, whatever, so that should be good. I won't have to worry about moisture getting in there. I won't have to worry about this touching. It keeps it from touching and grounding out, so it's a real nice, it's really nice to use the heat shrink. So at this point, I'm ready. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put some loom over this now to kind of protect it so that it doesn't touch any of the hot parts of the motor. I bought this 10-foot spool of loom at the auto parts store. It's flame resistant and heat resistant, so it's a little larger than what I was using, but that shouldn't be a huge problem. I'm just going to measure out a piece. I think I can cut it with scissors. Yeah. Now let me get the old loom off of here. And what I figured I would do, they had a 5-foot piece and it was 40 cents more for the 10-foot piece. So I thought, man, that's kind of silly. So I went ahead and bought the longer piece. And I thought, well, I've got a whole bunch of wire that is, ooh, there we go. A whole bunch of wire that the loom, you can see how this stuff is just falling apart. And I thought I would just go through the car and replace any of the loom that is, you know, rotting or coming apart, just drying out. This is interesting. This may be where they spliced it before. And it looks like, well, it's just tape. Okay, I think we'll be okay. I'm going to go ahead and wrap just a little more tape around this just to be safe. I've got some electrical tape right here, and we'll put a little piece around there. There we are. Whoops. Just to make sure that the old tape, since it's drying out and coming loose, that it's not going to allow this to ground out. Let's see if I can wind it back a little bit. There we go. Okay. All right. Beautiful. Pardon me. Now we'll just slide the loom on here, and once we get it inside the loom, then we can go install it in the car. Okay, just a little protection from the engine block. I'm ready to install this wire back on the knock sensor, get it hooked back to the wiring harness of the car, and hopefully get busy putting this pump back in. Got to get the car back up off the ground, get the tire off of it so I can get in there, and we should be good to go. I let it down. I put the tire on, I let it down because with my jack here and the handle sticking out, my wife couldn't park in the garage, and I didn't want to leave her parking outside. So I'm going to work on getting the tire off and start putting her together. I've got my cable run. You can see the coat hanger at the end of it there is the plug that plugs into the harness on this side. I used a coat hanger just to kind of pull it through because it was a tight compartment. Just taped it up with some tape. I'll remove the tape and plug it in, but first I got to run some loom up under here. You can see those wires right there that are covered in electrical tape. There's loom on the top one, but the bottom ones, the loom's all gone. I'm going to put a little loom on there, and then we're going to install the pump, and then we'll get everything plugged up and buttoned up. Well, I'm making good progress. I've got everything back together. I've done a double check to make sure that it all looks good, and I'm ready to go ahead and put some fluid in the power steering pump. You can see I've got the tire back on, and I've got it cocked out like that. because I can look up under here and I can watch for any leaks from the high pressure or the low pressure line when I fire the car up. Up top, I've gone ahead, I've got my serpentine belt back on, got my reservoir back in for the radiator. The pump is in and been torqued to 30 pounds per square inch. I've got my, let's see, my wiring harness is all tied back up. I've got looms on them. Everything is away from the motor as best as I could do. So I'm gonna fill it up, and I guess once you fill it up, then you crank the wheels back and forth a few times just to sort of work the fluid down into the rack. And then I was told turn it over for just like 5 seconds, just a couple of seconds, to let the pump spin and push it through the system, and then continue to check for low fluid, because you don't want to run it while the pump is empty. So let's get filling. Well, I'm out driving. I can hear a little bit of a whine from the pump. When I turn, you know, you hear a little bit of a whine. I just need to recheck the fluid. I think there may be an issue with, you know, as the fluid works its way into the rack. When I turn left, I can hear it. How about when I turn right? A little bit, but man, you want to talk about turning easy. Wow, that new power steering fluid sure made a difference on that. I'm getting ready. I'm going to pull over up here. I'm going to stop and I'm going to take a peek under the car and make sure nothing's leaking from the pump, the high pressure or the low pressure side. It's running good though right now. All right, I'll check back in with you in a few minutes. Well, everybody, I just put the car back in the garage. It ran great. I fired it up, took it around the block, took it down the street. And once it warmed up, the darn squall came back. Not as bad. I've been out, I've been searching and searching and searching, and I cannot find it. It sounds like it's coming from the area. It's between the water pump and the power steering pump. And I cannot nail down what it is. It's just driving me crazy. So I was talking with my wife. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take it into a shop and I'm gonna pay them to diagnose it, tell me what the problem is, and then I'm gonna fix it. Because I'm just beside myself. I can't figure what it could be. It's really aggravating, but man, I tell you what, idles smooth, runs smooth, steers great. The car's running great. I just got that darn squall. And I can control it, you know, if I ease up slowly off the gas, or, you know, when I'm going, you know, say I'm doing 35 and I accelerate up to 40, if you just let off the gas, it'll squall. But if you let off slowly, it doesn't. So I can control it where it doesn't make the noise, but I shouldn't have to. So I'm gonna call some mechanics tomorrow, and I've got one I trust, and I'm gonna give him a call and see when I can get my car in, and just drop it off one day on the way to work and let him diagnose it and tell me what the problem is, and then I'll be back in touch. I'll let you guys know and we'll get it fixed. But other than that, replacing the cable on the knock sensor worked great. The dash light, the check engine light that had come on is gone. The codes have cleared. So I couldn't be happier. I just got to get rid of the squeal. But that's it for now. So you guys take care. I'll talk to you again real soon. Have a good evening.